Yeah, it has started, right? Can you confirm it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, we can start. So our first problem is like we need to convert integer to the sum of two non-zero integers, no zero integers. So we are given an integer n, and no zero integer is a positive integer which doesn't contain any zero in its decimal representation. So we need to return a list of two integers a and b, where a and b are non-zero no zero integers, and sum of those two is equal to n. And it's guaranteed that we'll have at least one valid solution, and if there are many, we can return any one of them. So if n is 2, we can have 1 1, and none of them is containing any zeros in it. Similarly for 11, 2 9, and for 1000 and so on. For 69 also you can see 168, and for 1010 it's 11999. No, and none of the elements contain zeros, and constraint is like n will be less than 10 raised to the power 4 and greater than 2. Yeah, any approach or queries in this? I think our voice gone or
No, I think now you're okay. So actually,
okay.
I think Becca was saying, right? She was saying about the same, like iterate through each and every number starting from 1.
Yeah.
And take its complement and just check if there are any zeros in it. And keep on doing that. But is that the only efficient solution, or is there anything but what you have researched?
No, I have also used the same only. Like I iterated from 1 to n. I'm checking whether 0 is contained in the number or its complement. If not, then we'll append it. Apart from this, if anybody has some other, do share it.
Yeah, and it was giving a very good results after submitting it. So yeah. I thought that might be the only one. Yeah.
What do you mean by complement? Can you give an example?
Like if example, like sum is 5. If you take 3, the complement will be 5 minus 3. Sorry, 5 minus 3, 2. This is the complement. 2 is the complement of 5. Like when you give the number you take, subtract it from the sum, the remainder what you get, that will be complement of that number.
Yeah.
Not clear to me. Can you give an example of like 10?
Let's say 10. Let's say first number is 2.
Okay.
Start from 1.
Okay. Sorry. Let's say I started from 1. The next number will be 10 minus 1.
Oh, okay. Got
9
it.
is the complement.
Okay.
Okay.
What would be the worst case? It would be if the number is big, it can be.
Worst case can be n by 2, right? Because if you need at least 2 numbers, or n by 2. So you'll go till n by 2, and after that you will start seeing the same combination which you would have already seen.
Okay.
The only difference which I made in my Java solution was that instead of doing this using string, I just used the modulo operators to find whether there is any zeros or not. But the approach remains the same. Even I was trying to find if there is any better way, but turns out the brute force is the right way here.
Yeah, I think.
How is the modulo operator better in terms of finding zeros? Because so you're basically dividing by 10 every time.
Yes, so basically I'm not converting the integer into a string and then doing a string find. Instead, I'm just modulo 10 divide 10 until I find 1 0. If I find first 0, I would just return. So it's a similar approach.
Yeah,
that is take the number and the target minus number and see if both of them don't have zeros, return it. It's just a slightly different way of implementing it.
Save space, right? The runtime will be the same, I think.
Yeah, it is not creating new strings for each combination. That is true as well.
So the two factors, they can have zeros, right? Just the n shouldn't have zeros.
No, the factor should not have zeros as well. So if you scroll down to some more examples down the line, so there is one example 1010. So in that one, you can't say 1 and 1009. That wouldn't be your right answer because 1009 would have 1009
Zeros
has
and
20.
No, how, so why do you say that is not the right answer? I mean, that may be the first answer what they have shown as the one they encountered.
No, the problem statement is that A and B
C.
should be no zero integers. That is what they want in
Yeah.
the result. And a no zero integer is
Yeah.
basically an integer which doesn't have any zeros in their decimal representation.
Oh, I see. So n is not the one non-zero. Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And we are no zero integers. Okay.
Bhumik, do you want to show your screen?
Share. Go.
Okay. Let me know when you folks can see the screen. Is it visible? Oh, hold on. I did not share.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys are able to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So ignore this one. I was thinking something else. This is also graph work. But yes, so I start from 1 to n and see whether the first part contains any zeros. If the first part contains any zero, I don't use that. Then I check the remaining part. And if the remaining part also doesn't contain any zero, then I just create the array and send it. And how I find whether a number has zeros or not is just by iterating over the number. And as soon as I do a first modulo 10 and find a zero, I say the number contains zero and then reduce the number by 10. So basically, this is how you can take one digit from number one at a time. So yeah, it's the same thing with, yeah. Right.
I think you'd use modulus. If you have converted the number to string, no, then I think that part you don't need to. I mean,
yeah, then I
you
wouldn't
can
have to write the logic for finding the zero.
Yeah, exactly.
I just
Exactly. Yeah.
just didn't want to deal with strings as Leon was mentioning, right? And the problem would have been that for each pair here, because I'll be iterating to a lot of pairs. For each of them, I'll have to create two new strings and then do a contains operation on that.
Yeah, I think this is the better one of doing it.
Yeah, it shows the logic, like how you're getting.
Yeah, so initially I thought maybe I'll just count zeros, but that doesn't really is the goal. As soon as I find first zero, I should just return and say, oh, it has zeros. So like this was my first instinct, but I stopped doing it and instead just went with the first, or rather is zero present method.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got 100% everywhere, right? Memory
Yeah.
there's a time. Yeah.
Runtime 0, how much?
I don't know what zero means.
Yeah, so that was a good solution. That is what it says. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Please stop sharing.
Yeah. So we can proceed to next, right?
You think it, if we keep go like 9, would it work?
9.
Like for example, we have 10, then it go 9 plus 1. For example, we have like 100 or 3, that will be 99 plus 5.
1.
But I guess there will be a case not working. Yeah, I think we can move on to the next one.
Yeah, this is a search in a rotated sorted array. We have an array sorted in the ascending order, is rotated at some pivot unknown to us beforehand. That is, this array will become this, okay? And we are given a target value to search. If found in array, return true, else return false. So here 0 is found in this array, so it returns true, and here you'll get false. This is a follow-up here. That's true. Which Vedantams may contain duplicates? Would this affect the runtime? Okay. Yeah, any queries or approaches on this?
First, we find the pivot, right? And then we binary search left and right.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. So how will you take care of duplicates? Yeah.
But in that case, are you not doing it 3 times binary search? Because for the pivot, you will be doing binary search. Then for finding in either of the one, you'll be doing it twice.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, finding a pivot, even if, so binary search will take n log n anyways, right? And finding a pivot linearly shouldn't take more than O of n.
Binary search will take log n, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
No, yeah, you're right. Binary search will take log n, not n log n. Yeah.
Yeah, it will take log n, but then again, you'll have to go and search in one of the sorted arrays.
Yeah.
But still, it will be log n, right? Yeah.
Yeah. With some constant.
But in the follow-up, what they're saying, if it contains duplicates. So the way I was thinking of this problem, like the example second it shows, right, there are duplicates.
Yeah.
So if you see the duplicates, if you have at the both ends, you need to actually remove duplicates at one end. So I would actually go and remove the duplicate at the right side first, only the right side. So if there are duplicates on the left side, I will still keep it as is.
Can't we shrink from both sides if you find duplicates at end and beginning?
So if you remove both the duplicates, then if your target itself is the same, so
then, but
yeah, actually, so are you saying that you want to remove duplicates at both ends, but you'll just keep a single duplicate at the left side, right?
Yeah.
A single one.
I've actually done that. I removed duplicates at both ends.
But then if you remove duplicates at both ends, then in some cases, if the target itself is that number.
Yeah, so I've kept a condition to check if the value I'm removing is this thing. In fact, actually, I discussed the solution on the Slack channel today. And so there's just one sort of disadvantage to this. Somebody pointed out, I think it was Leon. He said that even if you're removing duplicates at the ends, if you have a lot of duplicates in the mid, so that might increase your call stack. I don't know. He pointed it out. Maybe at a point I'm still waiting to hear from him. But I did this approach of removing duplicates at the end, and it worked. It even came 0 milliseconds, so it was okay.
Yeah, actually, that's right. The only concern of duplicates will be if they are at the both ends, left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the way you were saying, you are taking care of that, right? So
yeah, I can share it if you want.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You can share it if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Go ahead.
Is it visible?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So over here, I'm just checking. So if they are equal, and if it's equal to the target value, return true. Otherwise, I'm just reducing the size of the array by incrementing start and decrementing end. And of course, if they were to cross, then that would be false. And then it's normal binary search of rotated array, basically the first part.
So in the first one, you are actually going through almost like the normal iteration, right?
Like iterating from both ends if there are, duplicates at both ends.
Let's say if you have 3 elements in array and all the 3 are equal, then
So if I guess at that point I keep decrementing, and once it reaches this, I return false. If the value wasn't there, that if target wasn't found,
yeah.
so I would return false.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that should be fine, I would say. And so your rotated one, the way you are actually, you are not using the pivot way, right? Okay.
Sorry, what way?
So for you finding the rotated array, if you want to find a target in the rotated array, the second while loop. So you
Yeah,
are
that
doing
will
a
be
binary search.
normally. Yeah, that's like the first part, the normal binary search and rotated array.
Okay, so you are, okay, in this you are actually trying for the first case where the target is equal to the midpoint. Then
Yeah.
you are returning true, and then you are dividing into one is the left array is sorted or the right array is sorted.
Yeah, and then checking the value.
Yeah, it looks okay to me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Should I stop sharing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Any
thanks.
queries?
What if there is like a 2, 2, 2, 2, and then at the end 0? The first while loop is not gonna go in.
Oh, that's fine. But then it will go in the second while loop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Leon pointed out. You know, if the duplicates aren't at the ends, the duplicates might be centered in the middle.
But that still should be fine.
Yeah, that is just the normal, the way
Right.
it will work out. Yeah.
Because you will still have a duplicates anywhere.
Yeah.
Got it.
But
Okay.
they are sorted node. Yeah. They will consecutive. They will be consecutive only. It's, yeah.
All right.
Then the normal process will work where you'll divide the array into 2 halves, check which one is sorted.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, but no, I'm trying to understand why they say in the follow-up where nums may contain duplicates, and you will have any runtime complexity. And
Yeah. So if the entire array was all of the same value or something, and suppose the entire array was full of 4s and I was searching for a 5, I would literally be doing an O of n iteration trying to remove the duplicates at both ends. And then I might finally realize 5 isn't there. So in the worst case, it's going to be O of n. It won't be O of log n. Because normal search in a rotated sorted array is supposed to be just log n, not O of n.
Right. Yep.
The same thing I think I did, like mid, low and high. I just took the mid value. If it matches, we'll return true. Else I'm checking if all the 3 values are equal, low, mid, and this. Then I'm shrinking the array. And rest is this same, like low is less than your mid value. Now we are checking if target is greater than the low, less than the mid, will go to the high will be your, we'll go to the left part, else we'll go to the right part. And this is the counter part of that. If your target is greater than mid, then you go to the right half, and else you go to the left half.
So you're taking the care of the duplicates on line 15 to 17.
17.
Sorry, why are you comparing with nums mid? You just want to compare low and high to have dupes, right?
In case I thought if all the 3 elements, array, we get all the three elements are equal. 3 elements are given in the array, and all of them are equal.
Yeah, but you are not using that information. You are just comparing it, right?
But you're shrinking only if all 3 elements is.
Yeah.
If the mid is different, then you're not shrinking.
No, in that case I won't.
Oh, okay.
But well, you should, right? So imagine, let's say there's an array, the initial array that doesn't have dupes at the terminals, but then you split into 1/2, and this split now
Uh-huh.
has loops. Well, that's not possible actually. In a sorted, this won't even, this will be only a degenerate case where all elements are similar.
So, but in that case, do you need that for 15 to 17? Can you do without that too?
Yeah, I can skip it. Where is?
So it will still work, right? Might be there is some.
It's working for this. Let's check for this one. It's working, but let's see. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, this was I'm telling 3 triple A's if. Yeah.
For that, actually, you're using it. Okay, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
But that may be because you remove the entire condition, right? If you just remove the nums mid, then it should still work.
Then let's submit it only. This one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's because we are looking for one. So you would have to like keep a condition there, checking if that nums, low nums, high is the value you want.
Yeah, this failed regardless of whether you had mid or not.
Yeah. And we have to check if it is a target or not. I mean, if they are duplicates and they are target, then would C was taken care of. But here it was irrespective of that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can switch to next. I think this XMS. Okay. Yeah. Next one is like smallest subtree with all the deepest nodes. Okay. So given a binary rooted tree at root, the depth of each of the node is the shortest distance to the root. A node is deepest if it has the largest depth possible among any node in the entire tree. And the subtree of a node is that node plus the set of all the descendants of that node. We need to return the node with the largest depth such that it contains all the deepest nodes in the subtree. So if you look at this tree, this is the deepest subtree. I mean, this is the deepest node which has this as a subtree. So your answer is here 2, 7, and 4. It's at the maximum depth or height, you can say. And they are in a serialization order, like level wise, like 3. The input itself is given like this. Input not. I mean, you have to give the output in the output. This is a serialization of the subtree. Serialization in the sense level wise, like 3, then 5, 1, 6, 2, 0, 8. And then 2, 7, and this 7, 4.
Null 7, 4.
I think the output just asks for the root of the subtree. That printing it level-wise, lead code takes care of. If you check the code.
My own code.
If the code which they ask for a node to be returned, right?
Yeah.
Return the node, yeah. But
so we just
I think in output they have given this as 2, 7.
No, but that's because they'll take care of it. They print it and then they show what is being printed with your node.
Okay, might be.
So I have a query. So if over here they're saying 2 is the answer because 7 and 4. Hello?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
And if suppose if this tree were to be modified and there was say a node 9 below that node 8, in that case, what would the solution be?
The whole tree. The root will contain all the deepest nodes in that case.
So in that case, 3 would be the answer?
Yep.
Oh,
I guess so. Like that's what my understanding is.
Yeah, otherwise initially I thought maybe they just want the parent of the deepest. I'm like, that doesn't look like a hard code. Okay.
No, come again. Are you saying if there is a node
if there's a node 9 below node 8, so then 9 would also be one of the deepest along with 7 and 4. And in that case, they want a root of the subtree containing all three nodes, 7, 4, and this 9. So in that case, root 3 would be that root of the subtree.
That is like common ancestor you are finding out.
Yeah, right. That common ancestor they are only wanting. Yeah.
Let's say if 2 had been connected to 1 and this 7, 4 and leaf of 8 is 9, then 1 you would have returned in that case. Makes sense, right? I mean, saying somehow this 2 was connected to, no, it can't be connected. Let's say 0 is removed from here, okay, and this 2 is connected to 1. And you have a leaf for 8. So for them, I think we should have returned.
Yeah, 1 would have been
because
the
that
answer.
is the point. Yeah, because that is the point at the minimum point where they are returning. But in that case, 3 could have been also the answer. They are not saying you to return the lowest common.
I think they are saying the lowest common. Otherwise, the 3 will answer before everything.
They haven't mentioned it explicitly, right?
We can check for a test case, right? Like
Actually, you can modify this test case, same one. Yeah, and then in that you add.
8, so
after 7, 4, you add 3 nulls and 1 9.
No, just 2 nulls. Oh, okay, 3 nulls. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, 3 nulls for this one. And 9, yeah.
Yeah, they expect 3 to be the answer.
Yeah, so they are saying that they return the node with the largest depth so that it contains all the deepest nodes. So 3 doesn't have, or rather, I'm not sure what if 3 will be answer for everything.
Yeah, it says 3.
Yeah, it's 3. It starts with 3.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the LCA.
Yeah, lowest on a binary tree.
For
but before that we need
nodes.
But before that we need to check that whether it is at the deepest level.
Yeah. Is there like is this a specific type of problem with LCA or whatever?
Your LCA is a specific, like in binary search tree, they'll ask you where's the lowest common. I mean, both in binary tree or normal tree, they'll ask you whether the 2 nodes meet at some point. So you need to return that point.
Oh, okay.
Like
so this is like
0.
multiple nodes and we need to find the common point of those multiple nodes. Okay.
So 0 in it, you'll have 1. For this 2, you'll have 5. If you want to share the code if somebody wants to share.
I don't have the code, but an approach in mind. Could not solve it last night, but have some idea.
Yeah,
so what I was thinking here was that maybe compute the depth of the subtree for each node. So at the node 7 and 4, the depth of the subtree would be 0, 0. At node 2, the depth of the subtree will be 1. For node 6, the depth of the subtree would be 0. And likewise, compute for all the nodes. And then do a level order traversal for the whole tree. So in the first level, you will have 3. In the second level, you will have 5, 1. And in the last level, you will have 7 and 4. So once you know the number of levels in the tree, that is, in this tree, the number of levels is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I have got 4 levels, and 4th is the deepest level. So that means that I'll start going up and find the check all the levels so that I get the deepest node from that level. So basically, I know that the deepest level is 7 and 4. So now when I'm looking at the depths at 6208, 6 has depth of 0, 2 has depth of 1, 0 has depth of 0, and 8 has depth of 0. That means 2 becomes my answer. So if there is only one node at any level which has the highest depth, that becomes my answer. Does it make sense?
Yes, somewhat I would did similar to that.
Yeah, so I did not get to implementing this, but this is just an idea which I was planning to implement.
Would you draw it on a pic? You want to, I mean, draw it on a whiteboard.
Yeah, so you would first go find the depths at each level, right? That will be one traversal, and then again you will do a BFS.
Yes.
And then after BFS, while you are coming back, maybe backtracking, at that time you are going to find out which node is the one.
Yes, because see, at any level, if I want only one node which comprises of all the nodes which are at the deepest levels, right? So in the case of, for example, I don't have 7 and 4. So the depth of 6 and 6208, the depth of those nodes are zeros, like depth of the subtree, which is contained below this nodes is 0. Same for 5, 1, the depth is 1. For 3, the depth is 2. So now I know that at any level, I want one node which is more than its peers. So at 6208, everything is 0. At 5, 1, everything is 1. But at 3, there is only one node which is at 2. So that becomes the answer. If there are dupes at any level, if there are dupes at the depth, then I should still go further up to find the one node which has the maximum depth.
Yeah, but in our case, what we were just discussing is that, so if you have a 9,
you don't have any dupe. The values of each node will be unique.
No.
When I say
what
dupes,
do you mean to
dupes
say?
for the depth.
Depths, yeah.
Okay.
So like now the case what we were actually looking for, if we have another node 9 for on the 8th node, right? As a left of right of 8th node. So in that case, in your second last level, you will have at the 2 you will have depth of 1, and 8 also you will have depth of 1, right?
Yes. So that means if I have dupes there, right? So 2 has 1 and 8 has 1. That means I'll need to go further. I need to go at a place where there is only one maximum depth.
Okay, yeah, that should work actually. Yeah, I don't see any problem why it should not work. Yeah.
I tried to solve this using recursion in one pass.
Yes, you can share it.
Recursion in one pass, okay.
Do you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do that, I'm going from, with recursion, I'm actually finding by putting the node which may be the answer from the bottom. So let's say we go all the way down, and for 6, from 6 I return the height. What is the height for that node, and what is the left tree, and same way when I'm reach here, the 6 will return back to 5, and then from 5 it will go down to 2. So when I'm at 2, when it will return, so it will return the height of the 2, and the node which may have the which may be the answer. So at 5, and I'll make the decision here recursively. I'll check that what is the left height, what is the right height, and the tree which has the biggest height will be I will use that and return that as my answer to the top level, or you can say the previous level. And recursively I'm doing this, and at the end it will return the final node.
So you are comparing the LH with RH, that is the left height with the right height.
Yes.
Whichever is the greater, you're going to return that.
Return that.
That tree, okay.
Yeah.
So at the end, you have to return root. No, what I mean is,
if the height is if height is same, then return the current node.
Okay.
If left and right subtree height is same, so the case here at that 2. So when I'm here at 2, so left side is same height, right side is same height. So then I'll return that 2 as my node.
Okay. Yep.
Hey guys, I'm Gaurav this side. I wanted to ask, like, whatever solutions we discussed are great, but let's say if someone get this question in an interview, how should we approach it? Let's say we don't know what the optimized solutions are, whatever we discussed, optimized solutions, they are great. But the idea is how we can break this problem into similar subproblems, into smaller subproblems that we might know about or we might have solved earlier.
This could be one of
the key to any interview is not coming up with a very optimized solution, but at least coming up with a solution that we know.
Or how to actually approach a unknown problem.
Yeah. Anyone has any idea?
I think they were giving we need to calculate the depth. So for calculating the depth, you can either use BFS or DFS, right? I mean, I'm not exactly sure. I'm just saying. They were asking for the deepest leaps, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So one thing here that we have to get the depth, the node. So definitely, I mean, I get the intuition that I will have to visit all the nodes.
Okay. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can share it.
Yes, please.
You guys can see the whiteboard?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me draw this tree here. And this is maybe one of the solutions that I thought about. I'm not denying that there are better solutions. You guys already discussed those, but this is from the perspective, okay, let's say I've given this problem in an interview and I don't know how to come up with the optimizer, but at least I should be able to solve this using some brute force approach. Okay. So let's say we are given that tree like this. What's our first goal? We are asked to figure out the deepest node, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the deepest nodes here?
7, 4.
7, 4. Okay. Now, how can we find the deepest nodes in a tree, binary tree?
Maximum height I mean, leaf nodes. No, not leaf nodes, like maximum height of the tree. That will be the deepest node.
All the deepest nodes. Yep. Maybe we can find the height of the tree and then like calculate the node, the depth of each node, and then find the deepest nodes. What's the other approaches?
Do level order travel and you find the last level, but I'm not sure how do we return the.
No, like let's not talk about like returning anything. Like let's like I'm trying to like divide this problem into multiple sub problems, and then see how we can solve all those sub problems to come up with a solution to this problem. Okay, and again I'm saying it not might be the optimized approach, but it will be an approach. Okay, so we said we can use the level order traversal, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and what we can use for level order traversal?
Q.
Right. I believe like everyone should be aware of like how we can do the level order traversal. We have like 4 levels, yeah, from 0 to 3. So let's say like if we are using Q to do the level order traversal, okay, and in the last pass, like what are the elements left in our queue? Should be 7 and 4, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, and let's say like maybe I can extend this example which you guys are talking about. Let's say like we also have 9. Yeah. Okay. So these are the elements that we will be left in our queue. Now, let's say while we are doing the level order traversal, okay, what if I maintain a map? It's a simple hash map where I have a child and its parent. Okay. Because like while I'm doing like level order traversal, I can like create this map, correct? So yeah. For 5, I can say its child, like its parent is 3. For 1, its parent is 3. For 6, parent is 5, and so on. Okay. Maybe write few more elements, 2, 5, and so on. Like maybe we can just create this map. Okay. Now, in one pass, we know all the, using the level order traversal, we know all the nodes with the deepest level. And let's say like we have built this map, okay, where we know like what's the parent of each node. Is there any way like I can utilize this information to come up with a solution? So think of this. Now my tree is like looking this map is looking something like this.
So you keep on looking for all these nodes in the map to find their parents. And so when you get a same parent, a single parent for all of them, then you return that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say like I put all of these nodes in a queue or whatever like data structure we would like. Okay, take first 2, correct? Mm-hmm. And then let's say now I have 7, I have 4. Okay, and I have to find the common parent for 7 and 4. So does this problem looks like a intersection of 2 linked lists? Let's say like our one linked list is this, and then the second linked list is this.
Or the paths as an interest.
Yeah, like the paths. Yeah, because once I have like 7 and 4, okay, and I have like all this information in the map where I know, okay, who is the parent of who. Then this problem simply reduces to given 2 nodes, finding the intersection of, like if I consider those as a linked list, Okay, then for those two nodes, like what's the intersection? Okay, so if I consider this as a linked list going from parent to the top and parent, node to the top, then this problem reduces to figuring out intersection of two linked lists, correct?
Right, yeah.
And it's like a very common problem, like we all know like how to solve that. Correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we take the first two elements in the queue. What should be the answer?
2.
2?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remove those two elements, put 2 and 9 in the queue. So what I'm saying, like just take top 2 and then replace it with 2. Okay. Now, what will happen like if we try to repeat the same algorithm on 2 and 9?
Yeah, we will get the 3.
We will get the 3?
3.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's what I wanted to talk about, like how to divide a given problem into like multiple sub problems that we might have already solved. And even if like we can come up with this solution, it should be good for the interview. And then maybe it's up to the interviewer to ask maybe how we can optimize it, and then we can take it from there. But the key thing is to start like looking into a problem. Don't like get like nervous with the problem, and then see how I can divide this into maybe other sub problems. Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Any question?
Mm-hmm. Rather than visualizing as a linked list, we could have taken also like 7 4s common, lowest common ancestor would be 2, and then 2 9s common ancestor would be 3.
Yeah, like so there are like multiple ways, but this is like just one approach
well, simplest way actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. I mean, actually, that's the skill actually we all have to develop to actually break the problem, unknown problem, and find the solution using what we know.
Yeah, and then the only reason like I wanted to bring this up is this will help. This has helped me like looking into a lot of like different unknown problems from a very different angle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then see, once I know, okay, I'm looking at it from a different angle, from a point of view where I'm trying to break this problem into sub problems, it becomes like very easy to solve any unknown problem.
Yeah. How will somebody get this thought of it as a intersection of two linked lists? I mean, since you draw the arrow, so that visualization came, right? Like,
I believe like it's just the experience, like the more problems you solve, the more ideas like you get. Okay.
Yeah.
But like whatever you guys discussed are also like perfectly valid. So if someone can come up in an interview with the approach that you mentioned, like you guys mentioned, it's perfectly fine. But I believe it just comes with the experience. The more problem you solve,
exactly. Yeah.
You'll get those.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's great.
Who just explained? I didn't get your name.
Gaurav.
I'm Gaurav.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think Bhumik was also something on the similar lines, like what Gaurav was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was nice actually.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay then.
Any more questions, anyone?
Yeah, anyone question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Shank. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Gaurav. Yeah,
Thank you. Thanks, Gaurav.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.